Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and welcome to a little bit of pregnancy talk. So if you have not seen my update video that I posted maybe about a month ago at this point when this one gets uploaded, I am pregnant and I'm a fitness and nutrition coach. And so I wanted to make a video kind of talking about a couple of things that I started doing when I found out I was pregnant in terms of things that I stopped doing as somebody who is a very avid fitnesser, right? I'm working out, strength training plenty, lifting very heavy, all of that good stuff. Some things that I stopped doing to just be safe and do things on, I think, the err on the side of, you know, being really on point, right? Like pregnancy is a very difficult thing to navigate, especially if you've never been pregnant before, or even if you have, and every pregnancy is different. This is not medical advice. This is just something that I did and I wanted to share because I think that as somebody who is very into fitness, that getting pregnant can be kind of an overwhelming thing in terms of like, what do you do? What do you stop doing? What should you start doing? What should workouts look like? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what that experience has been like for me, and some things that I thought were important to, one, you know, make sure that I had a safe pregnancy. I am now just over 5 months pregnant. I'm about to be 22 weeks as of this weekend. And I wanted to just really, you know, there's a lot that we know we shouldn't be doing, obviously, when we find out we're pregnant, right? Like stop drinking alcohol, you know, avoiding things like sushi and whatnot, right? Like we know that there are certain things out there that we're supposed to be avoiding. And a lot of it is just due to the fact that we want to make sure that we are healthy and that, you know, with your baby not having its own immune system yet, that we would do everything we can to protect that baby, right? So what I wanted to talk about is 3 specific things that I decided to do really in my first trimester and kind of continuing now, and I'll talk about what it looks like now in second trimester versus first, but just some things that I did in order to, you know, just be mindful. At the end of the day, if you are trying to get pregnant and then you do get pregnant, obviously it's a very exciting time, but you also want to be very careful because miscarriages do happen and we want to make sure that we can try to prevent that as much as possible with being safe. Now, of course, it's not that if you don't do these things that you're guaranteed to not have a miscarriage. There's nothing like that. Again, this is not medical advice. These are just things that as a fitness coach, I felt like were the right moves for me. I am not a certified pre and postnatal coach. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. I am in the process of doing a certification for that. But I'm not going to say that this is like specific advice. These are just things that I personally did. Okay, so disclaimer there. So the first thing that I stopped doing when I found out I was pregnant was taking a lot of the additional supplements that I was taking. So there's not a ton of research on pregnant women taking a lot of supplements, right? We know that you should be taking a prenatal. It's got all of the things that you and baby both need in terms of growth and development. Typically also has higher vitamin D, typically also has omega-3s. I was taking omega-3s previously, but I stopped doing the additional ones and started using the one just in my prenatal. And I started taking additional vitamin D, but I stopped taking other things. The only, I would say, additional things that I'm still doing is I'm still using magnesium and glycine in the evening before bed, and I'm still using protein powder, but outside of that, I'm not taking anything additional. So what that looks like is creatine. I love creatine. I recommend it to almost everybody, but I am not currently taking it. Just not a lot of research on pregnant women and taking and supplementing creatine, so I stopped taking it. Pre-workout, also the same thing, just not tons of research. And for me, it was just, hey, if I can help it, I want to make sure I'm only doing what I know is research backed. And so those were 2 big things that I stopped taking. They can feel very different to take if you're used to taking those, because those are like almost, you know, creatine should be daily and then pre-workout is every time you work out. I got used to basically working out with like nothing, no caffeine or anything. Now I usually am using like the Mio Energy that's just got a little bit of caffeine and maybe some vitamins in it, and I put that in some water and that's it. But I mean, of course you can do coffee if you're into coffee. I'm just not a coffee drinker, but I stopped taking those. Additional supplements in terms of like an additional multivitamin, I stopped doing that. And I also stopped taking anything that was just like additional whatever, right? The biggest thing when you do find out that you're pregnant is to talk with your physician about what you're currently taking and what is safe to continue taking. But this to me is more so specifically about supplements. So for example, I was taking something that was supposed to be good for concentration, that was not like additional caffeine, I stopped taking that product. I was taking a product that was supposed to help with cholesterol, not a medication, but I stopped taking that as well. So there were some other small things in there, but just one of the things I would recommend when you find out you're pregnant, and again, this is just a recommendation, it's what I did, but also typically is recommended in general, is just to not be taking all of those additional things until you clear them with your doctor at your first appointment. Okay, so that's number one. Number two was my loading in my workouts. So I'm a very heavy lifter. I love to lift heavy. It makes me feel good and strong and powerful. I maxed out a bunch of lifts in February, and then I got pregnant literally in March. So I took down a lot of my loads by almost 50%. So like most of my loading was around 50% of what my 1 rep maxes were on lifts. So squatting, deadlifting, benching, all of those things, I cut down the amount of load I was using. You don't have to cut down to 50% in a specific trimester or anything like that, but for me, that's what felt comfortable. Your body starts feeling a little weird when you're pregnant, like certain positions start feeling a little funky. Sometimes overhead pressing felt weird. Sometimes being in a deep squat felt weird. Things like a leg press where I was having, my legs come towards my belly that was not even really a belly yet, felt weird. It just felt off, like just uncomfortable when it was under a lot more load. So I just said, hey, I want to continue to move, but I also stopped lifting super, super heavy. Was I still lifting? Absolutely. You should continue to lift if you were already lifting. But I just brought down my loading a lot. I just felt like it made more sense for me to continue to get movement in when I could. I was lucky in that I didn't have, morning sickness and whatnot in my first trimester. So with that, I was still able to get in workouts pretty regularly. If you can't, that's okay, right? Everybody, again, is different. And a lot of people do have a lot of major food aversions and nausea and vomiting and whatnot. And so workouts may not even be on your docket. But if they are still on your docket and you were exercising before, taking your loads down will likely make you feel just a little bit more comfortable and make you feel a little bit safer in what you're doing, right? Again, the body is just a little bit more fickle in those first couple of weeks of pregnancy too. So being more on the cautious side of that is never going to be a bad thing. And the last thing that I did was just honestly removing higher intensity exercise. So if you're an avid CrossFitter, if you're an avid Orange Theory goer, things like that, you may not find that those things are comfortable for you, especially in the first couple of weeks of pregnancy, right? When you find out you're pregnant, you are from that missed period, from your last period, you're essentially 4 weeks, right? Even if it's the day you find out, you're not a day pregnant, you are considered 4 weeks pregnant. So, that first trimester, you're already a month in when you actually test. And it's one of those things that a lot of people actually don't really realize that until you're trying to get pregnant. But for me, it just didn't feel necessary because at the end of the day, I was still just trying to keep movement happening. And again, for protective purposes of just making sure that my body felt comfortable and safe to have a viable pregnancy, I just removed really all high intensity exercises. No sprints on the treadmill, no sprints on the bike. If I was doing circuits, I moved at a more comfortable pace that I felt like I could still talk through. Things that were, again, still having my health in mind, but didn't have to be pushing that upper threshold, right? There's just not really necessarily a need for that as you're trying to, keep yourself healthy through a pregnancy. And again, I say all these things knowing that, yes, of course, if you're already doing things, you can continue to exercise as usual, but it's not a bad idea to be safe, especially in that first trimester. So again, this is not medical advice, but just some things that I did that I felt very comfortable sharing because I feel like they're just a couple things. As someone who's really into health and fitness, like, hey, I did these things, like it's okay for you to do those things too. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or things that you did during pregnancy, I'd love to hear about them. So feel free to share those below. I am planning to share a little bit more about pregnancy and fitness as I go through things. So stay tuned for that. Now, if you liked this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you like this video also, you can subscribe to my channel. I do lots of fitness and nutrition content as well as some other things too, but I am a full-time fitness and nutrition coach and I'd love to see you more often. So we'll catch you next time. Have a great one and see you soon.